Hey guys, it's Erika, and I recently completed my collection of all 3 holiday cacti, so I thought I would make a video on their care and propagation. These cacti are so simple to care for. I feel like if you kind of look into it, you might get a little bit confused on how to care for them. When I first started caring for them, I know I was a little bit confused on how to get them to bloom, and just that whole forcing buds process, it seemed kind of intimidating to me, but it is so easy, and I'm gonna help you out. So we're gonna get there, we're gonna get your plant to bloom, and we're just gonna keep it healthy and looking good. So there are 3 different cacti that fit into this holiday cactus category, and the reason they're called holiday cacti is because they are pretty much named after holidays. So there is an Easter cactus, a Christmas cactus, and a Thanksgiving cactus. And the name implies the time of year when the plant blooms. So an Easter cactus blooms in springtime around Easter. Thanksgiving cactus blooms in wintertime around Thanksgiving, and then Christmas cactus also blooms in wintertime around Christmas. So it's pretty easy. The name gets you the time of when the plant's gonna bloom. But there is kind of a little bit of confusion between those 3 names. I find in stores they'll often be mislabeled. Commonly, I see Thanksgiving cacti mislabeled as Christmas cacti, and there's a way to tell the difference, but a Thanksgiving cactus is pretty much the easiest one to identify. It's very easy to just look at it and just be like, yep, that's Thanksgiving cactus. And oftentimes I will see it mislabeled as a Christmas cactus. You won't really find a Christmas cactus. They're a lot harder to find. I had to buy mine online, and even then I was kind of nervous if it would actually be a Christmas cactus or just a mislabeled spring cactus. We're gonna get into kind of being able to tell which one is which later on in the video. These 3 cacti are all epiphytic, which means they're not like your regular cactus. Like, they don't live in deserts, and they do need more water than a desert cactus would need. These grow on trees pretty much in the jungle, and they're kind of under a canopy of leaves, which tells us that they don't want direct sunlight. In my experience, they do like a lot of bright sunlight, just definitely not direct. I've found that early morning sun is okay for them. They won't burn from that, but other than that, they're not gonna be happy, and their leaves are gonna kind of bleach. So you can give them bright indirect light, medium indirect light, some low indirect light, but the less light you give it, the more kind of stretched out the cactus will be, which is, pretty common for plants to get stretched out if they like brighter light. But you give it less light, they'll stretch out. I keep all my plants in an east-facing porch, and they get some early morning direct sunlight. Since it has transitioned to summer, the sunlight has kind of shifted a little bit, so I had to move my plants because they were getting a little too much sun. And you can tell when they're getting too much sun because their leaves start to bleach and yellow, and I see it a lot of times at some nurseries where they'll have their plant hanging up high, and they might be getting a lot of direct sunlight, and you can clearly see the plant on the plant that it's getting too much sunlight. But all you just gotta do is bring it back in to less sunlight, and it'll be fine. My plant here had a little bit too much sun, and you can see a clear difference between this dark green, beautiful color, and then this is definitely a more yellowish color. So that's how you know when they're getting a little bit too much sun. Also, since these plants live in the jungle, they do like a lot of humidity, but you do not have to provide them with a ton of humidity. They could be fine in just like a normal amount that you would have in your house, which is why they make great houseplants. So you don't need a humidifier. You don't really need to worry about that too much. It's a bonus if you can give them a lot of humidity, but if you can't, then that's completely fine. I don't really give my plants humidity. Like I said, I keep them outside, and I live in Southern California, so it's not really humid over here, but they have been doing really well, really great out there. And moving on to the fact that they're epiphytic. Epiphytic means that they grow on trees, and they don't really grow in the ground in soil. So they do like a really, really airy mixture. And if you notice that they're not really doing too well in their plastic nursery pot, when you repot them, I would recommend putting them into a terracotta pot because those allow a lot more airflow than a plastic pot would, and it dries out the soil much more quickly than a plastic pot would. In the soil mix, you can use cacti soil, succulent soil, just not any regular potting soil, and if it makes you feel more comfortable, you can add in some extra perlite or pumice. I like to add orchid bark because it kind of replicates growing in a trunk of a tree, and it helps the soil dry out very quickly, so I really like to do that. So that kind of leads us into the watering schedule for this plant. So whenever the plant is not blooming, I will water it when the soil is completely dry, and I'll even leave it a couple days after the soil is completely dry before I actually water it, and they seem to do really well like that. For the ones that are in, well, most of them are in plastic or nursery pots, but I will kind of watch the soil come away from the pot, and then when I water it, I will keep it in a saucer for around 30 minutes so it has a good time to soak up all the water, because when the soil is that dry, then it's kind of hard to retain the water just by, giving it a little water with your watering can and then soak it all up. So I would recommend to keep it in a saucer. The roots will drink up all that good water. And when the plant is blooming, that is when I will water more often. I will almost let the plant completely dry out, but I won't let it dry out, and then I'll just water it like that, and I won't put it in a little saucer during this time. I'll just water it without letting it soak up the water, since I am not letting the soil dry out, so it's much easier for the roots to keep drinking the water. Yeah, they're pretty easy, but they will die from overwatering, so definitely do not overwater these plants. This is how they might look if they are overwatered. You can see all the leaves are just crumpled and they look almost dead, and I'm leaving them to see if I can maybe revive them, but I don't really have much faith in that. This could be how your plant looks if it's overwatered. And then lastly, we're gonna get into kind of their blooming cycle, how they flower, and how to get your plant to flower. These plants start to bloom when it gets colder and when they get less sunlight. So naturally, for a Thanksgiving and Christmas cactus, since those bloom in Easter, that kind of happens naturally throughout the season of winter. So the days will get a lot shorter, and it also starts to cool down. That is kind of what will get your buds to start growing. Your plant will start budding, and then they will bloom from that. For me, I didn't need to do anything special. The only thing that I would say that you have to do is, if you are keeping these plants under grow lights, if you want them to bloom, you gotta take them out from under the grow lights and put them in a window somewhere. They cannot be under grow lights and sprout, because you probably have them on for a longer period than the sun is actually out in the wintertime. So I would encourage you to move it next to a window and in just a generally less lighted area of your home. Also, being next to a window, it will most likely be colder there, since it's right next to the outside. The only thing is blocking is a glass pane. That process will kind of more naturally happen for the plant, and you don't really need to worry about anything. It will just happen on its own. But if your plant doesn't start budding during, for example, if you have a Thanksgiving cactus and it doesn't start budding during Thanksgiving, that's fine. Your plant might just be on its own little clock. You will start to see a Thanksgiving cactus being sold pretty early on in the season, and yours might not be blooming yet. All these other Thanksgiving cacti are fully blooming. You don't need to worry about that. I know that was a worry of mine when I would go into stores and see a bunch of Thanksgiving cacti blooming. Mine didn't even have buds yet. I was thinking that my plant wasn't going to bloom at all, but it did, all on its own time. It eventually got there and put out some really gorgeous flowers. Also, I have some tips on purchasing a Thanksgiving cactus and a spring/Easter cactus. These plants are sold in big box stores during their blooming time. So you'll find a Thanksgiving cactus at Lowe's or Home Depot or Walmart in the winter time, and you will find a spring/Easter cactus at Lowe's, Walmart, Home Depot during the springtime. You can see all their different color blooms and everything. There's different kinds of variegation on the leaves. There's some pink edged ones. There are different flower colors. There are so many beautiful flower colors that you can choose from. But if you want to find like a very good price on your plants, I would recommend waiting till the end of the season when they're about to stop selling those kinds of plants, and they will usually go on sale at Lowe's specifically for $1. And a lot of the times they have the plant labeled on what color their flowers are going to be. So if you see that a plant has a label of a flower color that you would want, you can choose it out that way, or you can choose out the healthiest one. And they probably won't have their blooms on them anymore, which is why they're going on sale. But at least you'll have a $1 4-inch cactus, and it's a really great deal. That's how I got my white Thanksgiving cactus, because I really wanted one, and I found this one on sale. I didn't see the buds or anything, but it was labeled as a white Thanksgiving cactus. So I was very excited to pick that up. So that's just a really good tip. But if you really care about what color the flower is going to be, then definitely pay full price and buy it when you see the flower, because it could be labeled incorrectly, and that would be a shame if you thought you were going to get the color you really wanted, but it turns out you got something completely different. You also might notice when you are shopping for a plant, or you might notice on your plant, that the base of it looks kind of odd and more woody. It's nothing wrong with the plant. When I used to go shopping for these types of cacti and I noticed that at the bottom, I didn't know if it was rot, if it was okay to purchase the plant looking like that, but it was 100% okay. It's just a wooded part of the plant and it's completely fine. You don't need to worry about it. All right, so now we're gonna get into kind of being able to differentiate these 3 different plants. The Thanksgiving cactus, in my opinion, is the most easily identifiable, and that is because it has really pointy edges, whereas the spring cactus and the Christmas cactus have scalloped edges, so it's kind of harder to tell the difference between those two. But you can clearly see the Thanksgiving cactus has really pointy edges, and it's kind of difficult to misinterpret the shape of the leaves. Like, they clearly are very pointy and you can tell right away. The trouble comes more on the Christmas and spring cactus side of things, because both of them have scalloped edges, so that's kind of where the trouble arises. What I have found is that a Christmas cactus has much more defined scalloping on the edges, and the spring cactus has more of a slight curvature to it, and it's not as intense of a scalloping. And it is a little bit difficult to kind of be able to differentiate them without holding them right next to each other, which is what I had to do to be sure. And then another way to differentiate all of these plants is by their flowers. A spring cactus is actually not even in the same genus as the Easter and Christmas cactus. Those are Schlumbergera, and the spring cactus is in its own genus. So they're completely different. So as you imagine, their flowers look very different. And honestly, I prefer the spring cactus flowers a lot more. They just look more tropical in my opinion. I really like how they have those pointed petals, and it's just so stunning in my opinion. And the Thanksgiving cactus has more of a layered effect to it. It's more of a layered flower, and the other one looks very defined. So let me know which flower you guys prefer. I prefer the Easter one. I think it's so pretty, especially a pink flower. Oh my goodness. But this is why, if you have a preference of flower, you should definitely choose the plant that has the color flower that you want, because when it blooms again from being cared for by you, it's gonna be so exciting, and you're gonna see such a gorgeous flower, and it's gonna be great. Now that we have covered all of that, we can get into the propagation of these plants. Now, all of these plants do grow in little segments as you can see here. And in some segments, you can even notice that there are some aerial roots growing out. So that is where the roots grow from. Now you can either kind of twist off some segments. You can have only one segment propagated. You could have 2 segments, 3 segments, however big you want your propagation to be. You can cut it off from wherever you want. There's probably a higher success rate with having more segments, but if you want to have a one little segment on propagation, that is completely fine. You're probably going to have a more full plant if you take a bunch of 1 segments than if you take one long, you know, like 5 segment plant. Pretty much what you want to do is you could either twist off where you want it to split, or you can cut off from in between the segments. I prefer propagating plants in water, so you can put it in water or you can put it in some wet soil and keep the soil kind of moist so that it will start to grow roots. Some people recommend letting the plant callus before putting it in water or soil, but I just take the cutting and I don't wait at all. I just put it into the water right away. And that's it. That's how you take a propagation. It's very easy, and it's always fun to have a bunch of the same plant because you love that plant. That is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave any questions you have in the comments down below or any tips that you would like to add for these 3 plants. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!